Well, hi, I'm Debbie Peacock, and I met this man. I'm not nearly as long as most of you.
Microphone there, so it's recording.
Oh, it's on microphone. Hi.
Yeah.
You just sit down.
It works best if you sit
All
at the
right.
table there.
Anyway, I was going to make it really quick, and I was just going to add to Dave and be out of the way real quick. But we met at the Art Beer Club, the Austin Art Beer Club. Neither one of us drink beer, but that's where we met, and a lot of the cowboy action guys come there, and that's how I met him. What a guy. I mean, oh my God. So funny, and all his volunteer work that he does. And thank you, Dave, for insisting that he go. I mean, we all need to stay positive with this because, you know, we can't just succumb to this is what's going to happen. This man's going to be around for a while. And we're going to keep that positive energy going and keep angels around him because he deserves it. I also met his beautiful wife at the Austin Art Beer Club, and what a wonderful family they have, and what a beautiful place where you live. And so thank you so much for being Alan, Barbee, Mr. Barbee, and
thank you, Debbie.
You're going to be around for a while. You're going to go shoot. So we all need to keep that going.
I want to hear Cowboy Small sing "When the Red, Red Robin Comes Bob, Bob, Bobbin'."
That damn bird.
I woke him up every morning and end the trail at 4 a.m. singing "When the Red, Red Robin Comes Bob, Bob, Bobbin' Along." About the second day, he said, "I hate that damn robin. I'm going to kill it today."
At least you brought me coffee when you did it.
This just covers the last 10.5 years, so it's short. Just a single.
Pat, thank you. This is my neighbor next door to my property here.
I've never set foot on his property.
Very wise lady.
Oh, I thought she was a trespasser for the first 10 years.
Dear Alan, isn't this a unique experience? Sort of like a celebrity roast. There are no Hallmark cars to cover this occasion. Sort of like you, unique. You were my first. Did you know that?
Whoa.
My first.
No wonder I didn't let you come back. I thought you were an ex-wife.
My first cowboy. On that early spring day in 2005, you came over in your big black truck wearing that big black Stetson to greet us, your new California neighbors, to Yucca Mountain. You briefly introduced yourself. I was impressed. This was a real Tom Selleck Marlboro Man model cowboy. Don't recollect what all you said, but made it clear that we knew there'd be trouble if any of our dogs went after any of your baby goats. There'd be hell to pay, too, if we cleared the land and interfered with the canopy because of some endangered golden-cheeked warbler that I've never seen. And you tipped your hat, bid us good day, and went about your cowboy business. After a while...
What an impression.
I was impressed. After a while, we learned that it was okay to feed leftover veggies to your goats. And we got a kick out of doing that every weekend when we cleared out the aging produce in the fridge. Never saw you much after that. But word traveled fast when Chuck shot the rattler in the back of my property late one night. It was hardly 9 o'clock the next morning, and you wanted to see the snake and talked me into giving it to you for a hat band. The big, black, scary cowboy hat wasn't enough. It needed a rattler hat band. Didn't that beat all? Cowboys are a strange bunch, I thought.
I was thinking Californians are strange neighbors.
But then I happened to turn onto the hill right behind you one recent morning, and you had stopped your big black truck and were gently relocating a red-eared box turtle to one side of the road. Cowboys do that? This cowboy did, and I was impressed again. Well, Tom Selleck, Marlboro Man look-alike, I don't know where you'll be relocating to, but it's been interesting having you more or less next door. I've honored your admonition to not bother your goats and to denude the countryside, and you will be missed.
Yeah. Steve has a good neighbor, man.
Where's my neurosurgeon? Do you have any words for me?
I don't know. Everybody's done such a good job here, Alan.
Smartest guy I ever met.
I can't live up to that.
Smartest guy I ever met.
I don't know when I first. I don't know. I really don't know when I first met Alan. It was probably in Lamar High School.
At the beach, man, when
But
he got saved by the strangler.
We became friends when he and I started surfing together, and he was a hell of a good surfer. I think everybody ought to know. Neither one of us has surfed in years and years and years, but Alan was a good surfer. And Duffin was a good surfer. Amos was a good surfer. We used to go to the shittiest places in California you ever saw in your life. Just the most god-awful flop houses and stuff. I'd save up $150, and $150 would keep me, everybody probably did the same thing, for probably 3 weeks in California, something like that. We'd earn a bunch of money, just enough to get by, and when the money ran out, we'd go back to Houston. We were 16 years old. I can't believe our parents let us do this shit. Anyway, speaking of parents, well, one more thing. Alan was a risk taker. That man did things I never would have thought. By the way, I like the throne.
Yeah, he's not sitting in it.
He would do things that I would never have dreamed of. I've told him this a million times. He was the first guy I ever knew to buy a house. I mean, I was probably 21. He was probably 19. I don't know how old you were. It was older than that, but his house in Steamboat. Steamboat was a great place. God, did we have fun up there. I learned to ski primarily from Barbee. I was a better skier than I ever was a surfer. That was an awesome place. Steamboat was an awesome place. But speaking of parents, I got to say, my mother loved Alan Barbee. She just didn't know him well enough. She didn't know what kind of stuff he would get us into, or the kind of fun we used to have. So, and my sister too. Man, what's Alan doing? Well, I don't know where Alan is right now. Why aren't you seeing more Alan? Anyway.
Your mother was a treat, man.
You loved my mother too.
I came back from the Caribbean sailing one time, and she said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I want to get a flip-flop factory and move down to Martinique and start selling." She's like, "Well, that's a good idea." She's an artist and a designer, and she's like, "That's a great idea. What do you know about, neoprene?" And I'm like, "Nothing."
That was one of his get-rich schemes, was sell, I don't know, rubber-tired sandals to the third world or something. It might not make 2 cents on each pair, but there's billions of pairs.
Billions of people buy 'em.
I think he was really thinking, I'm going to sell sandals to the third world.
Buy 'em.
Anyway, what a guy.
Was he like Eddie Haskell with your mother?
Yeah. And they sucked it up. They sucked it up. My mother just sucked it up. She
That's
loved
a lovely dress you have on.
Yes. Anyway, been a great friend through the years. There have been some absences. Yeah. So.
You just have brain cancer.
Unfortunately, there's some things doctors can't fix, and that would be one. Thanks.
Thank you, Bruce. Hey, Robert, man. I really didn't know this was going to go on. For those of you that need a break, smart people are out there communing on the driveway. My wife said, "You can't sneak off from this party like you normally do."
I'm Robert Amos, Robbo.
One of my best friends growing up.
Yeah, I couldn't remember exactly when, but I knew it was elementary, and I'm glad Rodney brought the pictures because it was 4th grade when you and I first met.
Yeah, but I gotta say, I got to Austin, and I knew Robert worked for IBM for 150 years since I went off on my adventures. So I called IBM up, and I got their locator service, and I said, "Do you have a Robert Amos?" And she said, "No, we have a Bob Amos." And I said, "Well, could I speak to him?" She said, "Well, I can get you his private secretary." So they ring me through to Bob Amos's private secretary, and I didn't know how to describe him. So I said, "Does?" She said, "Bob Amos," and I said, "Is that Robert Amos?" She said, "No, it's Bob Amos." I said, "Does he have a sense of humor?" And she said, "Not so much." I said, "That's him." I said, "Leave him a message. He's driving to the beach this weekend. We'll buy the gas and he drives." And that's the message I left at IBM with his personal secretary.
Got my attention, though.
He calls me up and he goes, "Look, man, this is really serious."
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah. No, you reminded me. We first time to California. I think first time we went as a group. We were at Pipes. Remember Pipes? Just south of Swami's. So we were at Pipes. Beautiful day. Waves were wonderful. I think maybe it was Bruce. One of you asked me, so what'd you think? Because I always had this attitude of, everything's just okay. Nothing was just great. And the waves were really the best thing we'd been on.
Yeah, ever.
Right? Ever. And so I came in, they said, "What do you think, Amos? What do you think?" And I said, "It's okay." It's okay. It's just, and he said, "Only you would say that." Anyway, so I wanted to add a little bit. So Rodney covered quite a bit. I remember the 64 Malibu. I think there was 5 of us in that, nonstop.
Fast car, man.
Nonstop. Houston to San Diego area, 24 hours. 5 of us in the car, 5 surfboards on top, rotating through the drivers. We had 5 warning tickets.
California, we get to California, the highway patrol pulls me over and he goes, "Now boys, where are y'all heading in such a hurry?" And we're like, "Were we speeding?" And the guy's like, he's serious highway patrol in California. And he said, "Look, we're going to do a test here." And he said, "What's your name?" I said, "James Allen Barbee." He said, "Clap your hands 3 times." And I looked at him and he went, "Hey, they're getting smarter."
We got stopped in Arizona. I think Duffin was driving at the time. He gets out. He's talking. It's like dawn, right? It's right at dawn. We're going through this one stretch that, there's nothing out there except overpass, and there's a cop right behind the overpass. I don't know. Duffin was doing like 85 or something through there. Cop pulls him over and says, they get out and start talking, and Rodney gets back in the car after they had a conversation. We said, "Well, what happened?" He said, "I don't know. We just started talking about dove hunting," and he said, "You guys must be nice guys, so we'll just let you go this time with a warning."
I'll tell you what, you need to talk to cops because I have talked my way out of more tickets that I deserve to get them.
The Steamboat Springs story that I've got, I came up to visit Alan. Alan invited me. I was going to stay at his house. Alan was like was said earlier, was kind of the Colorado connection for Jay Rich to kind of get the guys that were coming up on his trips and getting them into the rooms and getting them situated and getting equipment one place and another. I'd been visiting and been skiing in Steamboat, and he said, "Well, you can either stay here and ski or you can go with me down to Vail." So I went down to Vail. We'll leave some of those stories alone, but the one story was I met my wife Brenda when on that trip. Later, Alan was best man at my wedding. I don't know if you remember that or not, but I think he was more scared than I was.
I was drinking a little, but I do remember it.
Any rate, I just wanted to add a little bit to those. Rodney covered most of it, but man, good times growing
sure
up.
Happy to have
good
you
times
here,
growing up. Good seeing you.
Taco guy. How many we made now? 50,000?
50,000.
When do we finish? How many do we have to make?
We just keep going. Herman, you want to come up here?
Where's
Herman? There you go. Anybody else here? Tom? Ed?
Where's Ed? Ed, get up here. Get up here, Ed.
But
I won't tell anybody you're a deacon at the church.
I'm going to tell you all a little something about Alan Barbee that probably you don't know. I met Alan Barbee probably 4 months before 9/11, and this was at our church, and we were starting up. The minister was just starting up a prayer group, and what was the name of it? Renovari. And
Lutheran group, a lot of paperwork those Germans believe in.
and so
Hate reports and meetings.
we showed up and did that for about 3 or 4 months. We did a little prayer and mostly talking. As soon as Alan showed up, we forgot the prayer and we just all started talking. Imagine that. But anyway, so the minister wanted us to start some activity, and he wanted us to buy diapers for babies, and we talked about it, and we said we can't do this.
No,
we're gonna make tacos for the poor people who show up here at church. We had a Loaves and Fishes program on Tuesday morning, and people would show up that are down on their luck and they need a helping hand. So that's what we would do, and we handed out. We started tacos, and we're still doing it today. 50,000 of them. We did the math the other night. But one of the things that we did with these tacos, we had a little prayer room off to the side, and these people that would come for help were brokenhearted. They were down on their luck. They were either out of a job, or one of their kids were sick, or they had a major ailment. And oh my God, the ability of Mr. Barbee to reach out to these people and to show empathy for them was beyond anything that I had ever experienced or seen.
No, they just had bad marketing. Because the reason I got to run a prayer room, and which is in itself ironic, is well, being raised a Baptist, I knew a little about the Bible, which I didn't believe in at the time, but nobody went to the prayer room. And so they said, Alan, you want to take over the prayer room? Because, I didn't have anything to do, just sit there by myself. So I would go into the General Assembly Hall, and I'd say, anybody in here have drug and alcohol problems? Well, of course, nobody raises their hand. So I'd say, okay, well, anybody in here knows somebody with a drug and alcohol problem? I said, well, y'all come on in the prayer room. So we got the prayer room full pretty quick, and it was a great experience being there those years. And so I got all the drug and alcohol people. We had these little blue-haired ladies, and they'd say, Alan, we have one of these crack people over here. Can you help? Like, crack people, and the guy he'd have like a knife in his waistband. And I'd be like, can we put the knife in the parking lot? And crack. I'm sorry, I interrupted. I'm good at interrupting.
No, that's all right. I just got one more thing to say, and I'll turn it over to these guys. But there's a country western song, and some of you may have heard it, but one of the guy runs his car off the road out in the middle of nowhere, and then it goes on, and anyway, but it ends, and the last line is, he just comes out and he shows up with his big old heart, and that reminds me so much of you, Alan. Oh, one more thing. I would have not wanted to be the doctor at Brackenridge who told Alan Barbee he had cancer and blamed it on his smoking. That guy, well, I don't know if he's still alive, but that guy is still burning.
6 weeks in February. What the hell did he know? Thanks, Ken. Thanks.
Well, Alan, I'm Ed, by the way, and Alan has a unique way of blending his true natural self in a way that makes our little group really appreciate what he has to offer us. And that is an example. We're just learning how to do this breakfast taco deal, and Alan is beginning the cooking, and we got a little secret family recipe we inherited from Ken. And so part of it is raw sausage, you know, these nasty rolls of sausage. Well, so we're at Alan's house, and Alan's trying to figure out how the best way to get this sausage cooked. So he greases up one of his blenders from Steamboat Springs is up there, all dusty. It's a big sucker. So he dumps all this raw sausage in this blender.
Margarita blender.
He puts water in it and he goes, mmm. And then there we go. We got all these breakfast tacos, and the next morning we're handing them out, and people are just having this stuff drip all over them.
America's Test Kitchen.
And then Alan's favorite story that he tells, I just love to hear it, when he was in Steamboat Springs, it seems like he was making a night of it with one of his buddies. And right next door was a Catholic church. Is that right, Alan?
Right behind my house.
Right behind his house. And the music was going, right? Early morning hours on Sunday.
Huey Lewis and the News, we were rocking out about 5 in the morning still.
And then what happens? A knock on your door?
And an alkalite with a candle snuffer standing there and goes, Father Tom asked if you could turn the music down for a couple of hours. Like a little angel kid with his snuffer. I mean, we're all wiped out. You know, we've been partying for hours. Bless his heart.
And then Alan always imparts some of the wisdom he learned at the knee of his grandmother, who was apparently a very faithful parishioner in the Baptist church. And one of the things he said that she used to say is, when those preachers start preaching, for 20 minutes they preach in the Holy Spirit, and for 2 hours they're preaching it out. And then there was the time his grandmother got baptized.
Oh, she fell off the cinder blocks because she was really short and near drowning in the baptismal pool. She made enough waves that the wave came. Remember Aunt Evie when they left the Baptist church? Oh, really? I might have expanded a little and made it maybe 5 feet, and they had these cinder blocks for her to walk on, but she stepped off, went into deep water. She emerged.
80s, I imagine.
Yeah, they had converted because the Methodists had gone bad on them for some reason. Bless her heart, she stepped into deep water, though, becoming a Baptist.
One thing I've got out of being around Alan Barbee, his gift to me is that he keeps me from thinking too much of myself. He has a way of bringing everything down to the reality of life. Hi, I'm Alan, and I'm an alcoholic. There's no truer acknowledgement in my little world than somebody who's honest with themselves. And for that, I can't tell you how much I appreciate the company of Alan Barbee, because nobody can get away with anything with Alan. And he's a straight talker. And the more I'm around him, the more I can appreciate his gift to myself and to those people who I believe value his friendship. And so all I can say is this has been a grand occasion, and thank you all for showing Alan how much you love him.
Silent Tom. He's a lawyer. He won't talk unless you pay him. Tom, thanks for coming.
It's great to be here. I want to tell y'all that there's 5 of us in this taco cooking deal. We get together every Monday night. For a while, for about 3 years, we had a priest that was with us.
Well, we drove him off, didn't we?
We drove him off.
Oh, bless his heart.
Tell him where this guy was from.
Kenya.
Kenya. He's ordained in the Anglican Church of Kenya, and he hooks up with our little group, and he comes over to give us a little pastoral guidance, right?
He'd been sent from Kenya to straighten out the Episcopalians in America, which he found impossible to do with our group. So he gave up and moved on. Good guy, really good Christian man. I'm not making fun of him, but we're kind of a hardcore group to be trying to.
That's it, Herman?
That's it.
Thanks, Herman.
Love you.
I love you, man. Thank you.
Can I fill in one of the stories that, real quickly, that I think Mark brought up earlier? It's kind of two stories in one, but when Alan was on the city council in Steamboat, and he really didn't like following Steamboat ordinances. So he had a dog. They got a new dog ordinance, and his dog had been in town for years and just roamed at will. And so the dog catcher, was it Dennis? What was the dog catcher's name?
Wally.
Wally captured his dog and cited Alan. And first thing Alan says, "Why are you citing me? The dog's the one that broke the law." So Alan's on the city council. This is an employee of the city, and he's going. What was his name? Wally. He goes,
Wally, a good guy, a really good guy.
He goes, "Wally, this is not going to end well for you. You understand that, don't you?" So they go to court, and they walk in, and
I use the "you can't teach an old dog new tricks" defense, because I thought, well, the dog was here before the ordinance, and everybody knows. And so the judge said, well, he said, I'm gonna rule in your favor this time, Mr. Barbee, but that dog is not grandfathered in. He said, so do not come back to court with the "you can't teach the old dog new tricks" defense. So every time I went back with the dog, because at that point then Wally kind of took a dislike to me personally, and my dog. And you can't teach an old dog new tricks, and she particularly liked garbage, and so, she was a problem dog, but at the time I drank a lot and I really didn't care, and didn't have to feed her that much, so I was happy. And
she raided people's smokehouses.
Oh, God. So next time I went to court, the judge says, what is it this time? And I had my friend downstairs. She was a Malamute, a Husky, and I had about 8 of them, and they all looked almost identical. So I had my friend downstairs with 6 Malamutes on leashes, and he was down on the first floor of the courthouse because you couldn't bring dogs into the courthouse. And Mike Holleran looks over the bench and he goes, we're not using the "can't teach an old dog new tricks, are we?" And I said, well, doesn't the plaintiff have to identify the defendant? And he said, well, of course he does. And I said, well, I've got these dogs, and I'd like Wally to identify my dog. And Mike said, Mr. Barbee, you're pushing that a little here. He said, but get your evidence. And I go, John, bring up the dogs. And he's bringing them up the courthouse steps up to the second floor, and they'd come in, all 6 of them, and they looked, I couldn't tell them apart. Poor Wally, he was a really nice guy, retired. For whatever reason, I'd run crossways with this decent old fellow. But nonetheless, my dog needed a defense, and he could not identify the dog. And Mike said, case dismissed.
The second part of this story, Rick and Mark and Buddy and I do a warrior weekend at the coast once a year and taking the wounded warriors fishing. And so we're sitting on the deck, and there's Sergeant Haynes. Yeah. There's like 7 or 8 of us, one black guy sitting there. We're laughing, and Alan tells this story. And everybody laughs.
About the dogs.
Yeah, he tells this story about the Malamute, and he looks over at Mike, and he goes, Mike, you can understand that, can't you? And I'm just going,
I didn't mean it to be.
He says, you think all of us white folks look alike, don't you?
We became good friends after that. Saying the right thing at the wrong time, or the wrong thing at the right time. I've had a lot of people be patient with me in my life because of my mouth. My mother called it shooting from the lip. I want to thank I mean, I'd like to hear from Glenn, but I want to thank Dale Hammock. He drove here from South Dakota. When he first came to Steamboat Springs, he had a serape on. He showed up at my door, and I knew he'd been a deputy sheriff in Texas. I didn't know at the time he was an undercover narcotics officer, living with one of Steamboat Springs' biggest pot smokers. And my friends would say, that guy keeps trying to buy pot from me, and they'd say, why don't you sell it to him? So I'd go, Dale, if you need some pot, I'll get it for you, whatever you need, man. And he'd like, no, I don't need any. I was just,
Remember what I said earlier about right to remain silent?
Oh, man. I can't believe you drove all the way from South Dakota to be here, and I so appreciate it.
Well, it's been great listening. I mean, Eni and all you guys, actually, I met you whenever I was dating Tricia. The first time that I met Alan was at his house in the fall of '65, and
young black sheep.
You were into the surf scene in a big
young
way.
Black sheep at the time.
Really long hair. Yep, made an impression. He was putting a Joe Cocker record on the hi-fi, okay, long before tapes, and I remember his father being a little disturbed about how loud it was. Anyway, so we go back a long ways, not quite as far as some of you other guys, and I'm glad you're here. I want to be sure everybody knows that Alan was on the city council in Steamboat, so if you do get to Steamboat, try to look around and remember that he sat in a bathtub of Jell-O, and I was there when he did that. But he did contribute. He did participate, and you know, if you knew him in those days with the long hair and the kind of the hippie atmosphere, you would have sworn he'd never be this redneck guy sitting here with a cowboy.
Yeah, well, those cowboys on the western slope of Colorado never met a long-haired redneck from Texas that loved guns either. And it took a while to crack through to those cowboys, but I became good friends with guys whose grandfathers had fought Indians just to hold their property. And I had the most respect, like I do, for my family in Louisiana, and men that really built that part of the world. And they had neighbors that saw Indians when they were kids riding across the horizon, and
yeah, there was a lot of fresh history in that area that we.
It was tough being a long-haired redneck back then.
It was. The sheriff didn't like him.
The sheriff didn't like me, but.
The reason the sheriff didn't like him is he threw marijuana seeds in the flower boxes on the courthouse.
Yeah, right in front of the jail, and those marijuana plants came up. But the week after I did that, I planted them in the planter boxes in front of the Steamboat Pilot, the newspaper, knowing that, they have a differential in growth rate. And so by the time the Pilot got hold of the news that there was marijuana growing at the courthouse, they had plants coming up in their plants. So they wrote a story about the courthouse having marijuana growing in it, and I sent a letter in saying it looked like the same kind of plants that were growing in They didn't publish the letter, but they pulled the plants.
This is all true.
Look where Colorado is taking us.
Well, the one thing that I wanted to tell you is that I was very blessed to know his parents, and they did a wonderful job of getting him to church and being a good Baptist and reading the Bible, or at least knowing about it. And a lot of those characteristics and good upbringing showed up in his life. Maybe not during that real hippie time, but Tarleton, you said earlier, knowing that Alan is a believer and knowing that he goes out and shares that with so many people. I mean, really and truly, it just means so much to be able to see somebody who's had their trials up and down, who's watched other people have those trials, me included. He's always been a friend. He's always been there. He's never second guessed. he just has been there and has put forward that hope that we all need to cherish and hang on to. So that's a little bit I want to tell you. I've known him for a lot of years, and I knew his parents and knew them well. And
you knew me when they didn't think they could salvage.
Yep. They went through those frustrating times that parents go through with kids that are expanding their horizons. And I got to tell you that one of the things, his dad was an electrical engineer, worked for Humble before it became Exxon, was actually involved in some conversations about the name change. But anyway, he was an electrical engineer, and one of the most frustrating times that I can remember in his life was when University of Houston was cutting trees down to build a new building, and Alan was there protesting, and on the front page of the Houston Chronicle was a picture of Alan. You remember that?
I have.
Yep, it's Alan on the front page, sitting in the tree.
I meant to bring that today.
With the bulldozer.
And bless my father's heart. My mother would pick him up at the Humble building every day. He would ride the bus to work, and she would take him the paper, and he would read it on the way home. But this one day, there I was on the front page, and I was happy, I mean, we made our point, they didn't cut the trees down. But I was sitting up in a tree, and the guy took the picture, and I had a pair of desert boots like we used to wear surfing, and I had a big hole in one of them, and my dad was angry that I had a hole in my shoe, and people would recognize me as his son with a hole in my shoe. And I said, Dad, you're missing the point of this. And my dad's like, oh, Margie, where's the newspaper? Because my mother was telling me all this, weeks later, and I was like,
And I was home.
He deserved a better kid. But.
At any rate, loving parents, that conveyed over to wonderful kids, and Alan has done a good job of sharing those things. So, and it's a privilege to be here and see you.
Thanks so much for driving so far. It's the Far Ranger.
Yep. I just came up here so you could tell me a story.
This is the guy that took pictures of my, his great-great-grandfather was buried in Oakwood Cemetery, and he said my great-great-grandfather was a Texas Ranger, and they're going to rededicate his grave. The Texas Rangers are going around rededicating graves. And so I went over there with him, and he had located the grave, and it was just, I just felt like I was at home. It was like, it was just peaceful and beautiful and old and sort of creepy all at the same time. And this is after I got my diagnosis with cancer, and I wasn't sure I was going to be buried in Bunkie. I was going to be cremated and put behind my friend's refrigerator so I'd last forever. In my first will, I was going to be cremated, and I was going to be sent in envelopes to a bunch of people I knew. And I had asked they just dump me behind the refrigerator so I'd live forever, because nobody ever cleans. I just thought it'd be funny after I was gone. But anyway, so Glenn says, well, maybe we can find you a lot here. So we find a lot, and I buy this lot to be buried in. And so Glenn said, well, maybe we got to get some pictures of you. So we take a saddle and a gun. I put on my cowboy clothes. I'm laying on my grave, and these maintenance guys show up, and they go, can we help you all? We're taking I said to the guy, I'm going to be buried here soon. And I said, if you're the maintenance guy, which grave gets better care, the corner lot or the middle one? He said, oh, the corners are always much cleaner. I said, well, you just take care of my spot then. It was a hoot. But just, you talk about 6 degrees of separation. Now, this was pretty early on in my diagnosis, and I really do have sort of an unorthodox sense of humor. And my wife, bless her heart, is a lot smarter than I am and prettier than I am and everything else, but her sense of humor is different. And she didn't think getting pictures taken at my grave was, she just thought it was a little inappropriate maybe. And so I didn't say much, I realized that I'd kind of pushed the boundaries, and because I was married once before, and I tried to know what I'm doing, which I don't, but I try to say yes, dear, more than I want to, and she really is she's just an amazing support and an angel in my life, but nonetheless, so I think, and there's some really nice pictures. Lynn's a good photographer. So the one I particularly liked, I was sitting on his grandfather's grave, and it's just a nice photo. And so I emailed them to Chuck, because Chuck's got a sense of humor. And, you know, and Chuck kept them, and then a few weeks later, Chuck said, I emailed those to your oncologist. And I was going in for chemo, and I met with her, and she said, you know, Alan, she said, you're becoming one of my favorite patients. And I said, well, why don't you get back to me when I'm your favorite patient? And she, too, is a dear, dear, smart woman, dedicated to just fighting a horrible plague that I mean, I'm sick, but there are people so much sicker than I am, and I see them once a month on Thursday, and I used to be afraid the first day I went in there, and now I just look forward to going to chemo and living long enough to see some of these people go in remission. And if you don't know anything about breast cancer, it must be as bad as it gets, because it'll metastasize, it'll move all over your body. These women are just heroes to fight breast cancer, in my opinion. So anyway, my doctor says, your friend Chuck Clinton emailed me those photos of you at the cemetery. She said, you got quite a sense of humor. And I really didn't want to, I didn't know, because she deals with a lot of death. And she said, I want to tell you, you made my day. She said, I have a fellow up at it wasn't Sloan Kettering, Mayo Clinic. And he said he's a chief of oncology, and he had lost several patients in the last couple of weeks that he liked a lot. And she said, I was telling him about you and those pictures in the cemetery. And she said, we got to laughing about it. And he said, you think that guy would sign a release so we could post those pictures at the Mayo Clinic? And I said, hell, what the? Yeah, man, I'll be famous at the Mayo Clinic. It's his fault, because he emailed them. And then my wife was with me that day, and she said, I just don't understand how it works out for you sometimes. Bless her heart. Where's my wife? Where's Karen? She's my angel. She's my support.
Come on, Karen, you deserve a hand.
That's my angel. That's my support. She's been standing in the breach with me. When you grow up in Texas, and I really don't mean to prolong this much more, but you can't ever get me to shut up, so whoever's got a gun, shoot me.
You have to do it yourself.
But, God, I did interrupt. I just stole the, well.
No, that was...
oh, no, and...
that's what I was going to say. And here's some pictures. So this one is Alan dancing on his grave. There's Alan with his grandmother's, was it your grandmother's Winchester?
Yeah, my great-grandmother's 1873 Winchester. One she used to shoot squirrels out of the tree with.
And this did cause a disturbance with the groundskeepers.
I don't know if it was sleeping on the grave or the Winchester that did it.
They were about to call the police until you talked to them, and then they ended up laughing, and, they said they're going to take good care of you.
That's good to turn.
Oh, this is you. Alan wanted to piss on his grave, too. So I took that back off. It was an accident.
That's in really poor taste, but Karen is laughing, so I guess we slid that one by. Go to the next piece.
Yeah, we'll stop. Those are the best ones. We got a whole bunch of them there. On the way out, we have a picture of Alan climbing the chain link fence, trying to climb out of the cemetery.
Growing up in Texas, and far range, I don't want to interrupt him again, but because he and Dave and Kickshot and Z and and Cowboy Small, and when the Red Robin come, bob, 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 wow. But you know, you grow up in Texas. I really grew up thinking I was going to be a cowboy. I wore cowboy stuff, and then you think about getting older, and you know, I always thought of having a heroic death, you know, Alamo or adobe walls, or you know, just I don't know, saving some old lady from a runaway train, and you get, you know, and then you find out you're just going to die like everybody else, slow and miserably. You don't have a, there's no great style to it. So I've just tried to do this with a sense of humor, which is my sort of concession to not having some, you know, life-threatening civil war to jump into. And,
oh man, you're being heroic though in your battle with cancer and the way you approach it. Great example. The way you talk to those ladies in the waiting room.
The chemo room.
Yeah, the chemo room.
Chemo spa.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Sounds like they all come to enjoy it now.
We really do. I took them hamburgers. We had a chemo picnic not long ago.
Tell the story about the black lady and her husband.
Oh, Sarah and Daryl. This woman had very, very serious breast cancer that was spreading when I first met her in March early on, and she was there for her first treatments. But you know, so I'd see them, and I would always ask her how, you know, if it had metastasized, and it hadn't. And then she went into remission, but she and her husband kind of danced around me, and you know, I'm a lot to take dressed like this and looking like a redneck or something, probably. You know, he's kind of a street guy, and so I came out I had to give a urine sample, and I said to the nurse, I said, if I quit putting my sister's name on there, will you quit giving me that estrogen? So everybody in the room laughed, and I said, well, I'm starting to grow breasts, and I don't know where to get a training bra, so I said, I'm going to put my own name on the urine sample from now on. And this black guy laughed, and he said, you know, we would have been good friends if you were a different color. And so the next time I came out, a month later, I said, because, I mean, it's no privacy, and it's, you know, probably embarrassing for some people, but, you know, how do you hide your urine? You know, so I came out and I went, man, it's so good to give a urine sample and not have a probation officer looking over my phone. He said, Alan, we're friends for life. And she's in remission now, and just, she got to ring a bell a few weeks ago, and just, you know, praise God that she's doing better. And anyway, but my sweetie, she's been there every minute of this, and I am not an easy. Everybody tell you I'm not. I mean, I'm not as nice as my mother said I was. Trust me. But that one knows me, and she's put up with my whining and my crying and my angst and I don't know that I could do as well for somebody else, and I will. And every one of you here, my sister and Stephen and Dale and Jan, and I just so appreciate y'all bearing with all this. And when the Red Robin comes by, English Bob, be nice to, and PK, who the hell are you, man? You get a clean shooter pin yet? Yeah. I won't.
Oh, that's good.
Go ahead. Go
Well
ahead.
done.
I met Glenn. I finally got offline, and they said, in fact, English Bob said, you know, you need to quit buying guns and go see these cowboys. I didn't know. I thought they were a bunch of bikers. I didn't know what they were. You know, got grown men that dress up like cowboys that shoot guns. Sounds a little creepy, but for me, it had a certain appeal, you know. And I'm like, but I don't know any of them. And the English Bob said, God, you're buying so many guns. Why don't you just go see what you really need? And I said, I had 3 sets of pistols by then and didn't know what I needed. So I followed English Bob's advice and went to an orientation. There was Dragon Hill and Glenn, and they just greeted me like a redheaded stranger, and it's just been a lot of fun and a good ride ever since.
Yeah, you felt like a brother right from the first. You were in the right spot there.
It really has just been fabulous. And
you finally got to be a cowboy.
guys like Kick Shot and his wife Kim was just people that volunteer and just do work. Mark, I can't thank all of you enough. Ben and Barb and I really appreciate this today, and it's just.
But no horse.
That's what Alice is saying.
I saw the saddle and no horse, and I thought, perfect.
You didn't tell the story of no horse, did you?
Should I tell the whole story? Okay, last story. I got this nickname, Jim No Horse, in Wyoming. We were running a hunting camp, and I ran the horses for my buddy Pat Chapper, who was, rough as a cob, but he had all these bankers from the east. We had wall tents out in Mountain Circle Wilderness and different camps around northern Colorado and one in southern Wyoming. So we were working this camp out of bags, and we'd been hunting all week, and the hunters were gone. They'd flown back, and we were riding horseback, and we hadn't seen anything that day, so we decided we'd ride into bags. And as the cowboys out there call it, I'm going to cross the line here, but the cowboys, I didn't say this, I'm just repeating something I heard. They called it, they said, we're going to go out tonight and get Indian killing, fat girl drunk. And I'm like, what? I mean, they're talking about killing people. We're going to get so drunk we kill people, don't remember it. And I'm like, or we end up with who knows what. So I'm like, okay. And so we ride into town in bags, and they have hitching rails. We tie up the horses, and we're inside getting drunk, and really drunk, because I used to really drink, and a lot. And about an hour into it, I don't know, we'd done 5 or 10 shots each, and my buddy goes outside, and he comes back in, and he said, Alan, your horse has been stolen. And I'm like, and I had my Model 70 in the scabbard, and I had my, my saddlebag, had my own tack, my slicker, I was like, stolen, my horse is stolen, I'm in Wyoming. I'm thinking, you can't steal a horse in Wyoming. So I called the police. I go, but they had taken my horse around behind the bar and tied it up. So I'm like, and I'm drunk and I'm mad. I got my stuff's gone, my horse is gone, and it's not going to be good, And so they send a cop over to make a report, and I'm like, I've been another shot in them. And my buddy, Pat Chapper, the guy who runs camp, goes out and meets the cop and tells him that the horse is around behind the bar. I don't know it, and he'd like him to make the report. So in comes the cop, and he's in on the joke. And he goes, Mr. Barbee, name, and he said, James Allen Barbee, and, address. And the bar was really quiet, because deputy sheriffs in bars usually get especially when people are holding drugs and pot and drunk as skunks.
Let me interject real quick. Baggs, Wyoming is an hour and a half from where the courthouse and the sheriff is located, so they had another hour plus to drink before the deputy got there.
Is that in Johnson County or
Carbon County?
Oh, the Carbon County Wars.
Yeah.
People don't know that stuff, but anyway, we're in real cowboy areas. So the guy goes, and it's just dead silent, like right now. And the cop, he's got on a Sam Brown, and I'm sitting at the table just weaving, and he goes, "Boys, it looks like Jim No Horse done lost his pony." So from then on, they called me Jim No Horse, and I hated that nickname because it made I should have known better that my dumb friends were playing a joke on me. But anyway, so for years I hated that, and then when I became a cowboy shooter, I needed an alias, and I thought, Jim No Horse. I called the National Club up, and they went, "Nah, nobody ever took that name." It was available. So. That's my last story. I just once again want to thank everybody for anybody have anything to say, they're sure welcome to.
Tell the story about your mom with pizza.
Oh, when I got divorced, my mother was raised in the Depression, and food was very important. She was the oldest of 8, and she supported the whole family because my grandmother took an emotional flip after my grandfather died. And so food was hugely important, and always feeding my friends. And so my first wife leaves with my best friend, my next door neighbor. Not that I didn't deserve it. I was not the best husband in the world, to be perfectly honest. But nonetheless, I found it upsetting in a small town. My best friend, town of 6,000 people. You know you're going to be in the news there for a few weeks. And so I called my mother. I don't know what to do. You know, I'm still drinking, and I don't know anything about, emotionally available or any of that stuff. So I called my mom. I don't know, 35 years old now. I go, Mother, Nancy left me, and I think we're going to get divorced. And my mother said, Alan, she said, the pizza was just delivered. She said, you'll have to call me later. So I come by this sense of humor honestly, and it's really served me well, and it's put me in good stead with a lot of good people. I've crossed all kinds of boundaries by being sort of irreverent, and I don't recommend it for everybody. But, that was the long story of the horse. The one part that was a little rough there, Indian kill. I mean, these guys are serious. Indian killing. I mean, even the thought of it just is creepy. Hey, Glenn, don't I get a handshake? You were just afraid I'd hug you, didn't you?
I was afraid you were telling this story.
Well, I think we ought to kill this performance and get on to eating something.
Speaking of eating,
hey,
you're coming back from California, surfing, heading back towards Texas. We hit the hill country.
Here, grab your mic.
We hit the hill country and we pull over underneath an oak tree, and there's a black guy selling barbecue. So I get beef, somebody else gets ribs. Alan decides he's going to get a chicken sandwich. So he orders it. The black guy says, "You want a chicken sandwich?" Alan says, "Well, yeah, I'd like a chicken sandwich." He says, "I'll get you a chicken sandwich." He gets back in the car. He says, "Now I know the difference between a sandwich and a sandwich. They don't take the bones out." Now let's eat.
Thanks everybody for coming. I really appreciate it.
I did not until I